The gray-haired herbalist laughs right in his face. He's got 3 sacks of this gray junk, and no one wants it. The young man lays all his savings on the counter, down to the last penny. He's the only one in the whole city who knows that in 4 years, this junk will be worth 200 times more. But to understand why a 19-year-old newbie is buying up useless weed, we need to go back a couple of hours. The first thing he notices is the smell. Cheap lye soap. The very same kind they used to scrub the floors in the registration hall of the Adventurers Guild. A smell he hasn't smelled in 5 years. A smell that shouldn't exist because Caden Ryu died 20 minutes ago. He looks at his hands. No scars. The burn along his forearm from his 2nd year of service has vanished. His skin is smooth, like that of a boy who has never held a sword. He touches his chest. Where 20 minutes ago, the breath of the ash wyvern burned a hole the size of a fist. It's intact. His heart beats steadily. A female clerk sits behind the counter. He remembers her face but never knew her name because she'll quit in 6 months. She smiles that same weary smile he's seen exactly once in his life, 5 years ago. And then a thin, golden window flashes across his retina. System activated. Balance. 0 gelds. He blinks. The window doesn't disappear. It hangs in his peripheral vision like a price tag in a money changer's shop. He shifts his gaze to the clerk, and the window obediently displays a line. Guild clerk. Valuation. 14 gelds. That's how much this thing estimates it would cost to replicate all the girl's skills. He looks at the guard by the door. Veteran swordsman. Rank D. Valuation. 2,200 gelds. For the oak chair in the corner. 3 geld. Everything in this world has a price. And now he sees it. The receptionist coughs. Caden looks up and answers in a voice he barely recognizes himself. Steady. Calm. The voice of a man who no longer has any reason to be nervous. Caden Ryu, 19 years old. The Silver Thorn Guild. She hands him a tin token. Number 7741. The same number. The same guild that, in 5 years, will send him to his death. He clenches the token in his fist and steps out onto the street. Hyrone is exactly as he remembers it. Moss-covered walls, narrow streets clogged with carts, the smell of fried fish from the tavern on the corner. Everything is in its place. Only he himself is different. The window flashes again. Skills available for purchase. Basic fencing, 50 gelds. Reading micro-expressions, 120 guilds. The list stretches down for dozens of lines. Any skill that exists in Volgard can be purchased instantly. No training, no mentors, no years in the training hall, just pay. One problem. Balance. 0 guilds. Caden smirks. For the first time in both his lives, he knows this situation. An asset with 0 liquidity but colossal growth potential. On Earth, it was called a startup. Here, it's called a penniless newbie. The difference is that a regular newbie has no information. But Caden has information for 5 years ahead. He knows which potions will go up in price, which dungeons will open, which guilds will go bankrupt, who will die and from what. He knows the names of the traitors and the names of those who can still be saved. His head is worth more than the entire treasury of Silverthorn. It's just that, for now, only he sees that price. He reaches a rented cubbyhole in the lower city. A narrow bed, a table, a window overlooking a garbage dump. He pulls everything he has out of his pocket. 47 guilders. In his past life, he blew them on a cheap sword that broke on his 2nd assignment. In this one, he'll spend them more wisely. He heads to the port district. The sun is setting. On the corner of the 3rd Street from the pier, a gray-haired herbalist is laying out sacks of dried roots. Old Dorian. In 2 years, he'll die of moon fever. But right now he's alive and selling a product that won't be found anywhere in 5 years. On the counter lies a gray, unremarkable herb, dried tenebra roots. 2 guilds a bunch. Bitter junk that nobody wants. Caden looks at them, and the window displays a line. Tenebra root. Current price, 2 gil. Fair price in 48 months, 400 gil. A 19,900% increase. In 4 years, an outbreak of moon fever will sweep across 3 provinces. The only cure will require tenebra extract. Apothecaries will fight over every stalk. And right now, the herb is lying on the counter and no one is even looking at it. I want all the tenebra you have. The old man blinks. He grunts. He chuckles. Kid, I've got 3 sacks of this junk. No one wants it. Caden puts 47 guilders on the counter. That'll do. The old man shakes his head. Take it if you can find a place to store it. It's nothing but a headache to me. Caden drags the 3 sacks into the back room one by one and dumps them in the corner. 94 guilds of gray weed that will turn into a fortune in 4 years. His first investment. Then he sits down at the table, takes out a piece of chalk, and writes on the wall. Names. 38 names. Who to find, who to save, who to hire, who to bury before their time because their death won't be their own. Mira Hale, healer. Doesn't yet know that in 5 years she'll stay silent when they're killing him. Layla Winter, former intelligence officer, still in service. Sadie Park, blacksmith, still a child. Doesn't yet know that her blades are worth 100 times more than she thinks. Rain Calder, captain of the Silver Thorn, alive, smiling, calls the newbies brothers. Caden writes his name last and circles it. Not out of spite, just like an accountant circles a line on the balance sheet that needs to be closed by the end of the quarter. The window flashes. Rain Calder, guild captain, price, 12,000 gelds. Caden looks at the number and thinks, not about revenge, about the budget. He lies down and closes his eyes. Tomorrow morning he has to report to Silver Spine headquarters. Smile. Bow. Say he's happy to be here. Say he's dreamed of this his whole life. And every word will be a lie. But a lie is an investment too, if you know when to cash in. The Silverthorn headquarters was located on 3rd Street in the upper quarter. A 3-story building of dark stone with a sign on which a silver thorn entwined a sword. Caden stood in front of the entrance and looked at the sign. In his past life, he had thought it was a symbol of strength and protection. Now he saw something else. The thorn wraps around the sword. It doesn't protect, it suffocates. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air smelled of wood and beer. A long hall with wooden tables. On the walls were maps of dungeons and bulletin boards with quests. 4 adventurers sat at the bar on the right, drinking their morning ale. Caden recognized 2 of them, a heavy-set swordsman named Garth, an archer with short-cropped hair named Nora. Both would die in a year and a half during a raid on the 4th-rank realm, not by monsters, because they'd be left without cover, so the main group could grab the loot. He looked away. A man emerged from the side corridor, and Caden forced himself to smile. Rain Calder, 34 years old, broad shoulders, dark hair with gray streaks at his temples, a scar across his left eyebrow, an open, warm smile. The smile of a man you trust the very first second you see him. The golden window flashed. Rain Calder. Rating, 12,000 gelds. Class, Knight of the Storm level 7. Hidden skill, Presence Suppression level 4. Caden held his breath for a second. Hidden skill. In his past life he hadn't known that Rain possessed Presence Suppression, a skill of assassins and spies. Why would a knight need a spy's skill? The answer was obvious. Rain stepped toward him and slapped him on the shoulder. His hand was heavy and hot. Little brother, you're the new guy. Caden Ryu. That's right. Caden nodded. Aye, Captain. Rain smiled even wider. Come on, no formalities. We're family here. That word, family. Caden could still smell the phantom scent of his own burning flesh, the family that sent him to his death to save on an attack. He smiled back. He bowed slightly. "Glad to be here, Captain." Rain led him through the building, showed him the barracks, the signal, the training hall, the medical office. At the door to the medical office, Caden slowed his pace. Inside sat a woman with dark blonde hair pulled back into a tight bun. She was sorting through vials on a shelf and writing something down in a notebook. Mira Hale, 22 years old, the medical officer. The woman who, in 5 years, would watch as he was led to his death and remain silent. The golden window displayed Mira Hale. Rating, 3,400 gelds. Class, Life Healer Level 4. Hidden Potential, Blood Alchemist, Level 0. Locked. Caden blinked. Hidden Potential. A class she'll never unlock unless someone helps her. In her past life, Mira remained a 4th-level healer. Not because she couldn't grow, because no one invested a single geld in her. Rain nodded toward the office. "Mira, our best healer. If something hurts, go to her." Mira looked up at Caden, a professional gaze, assessing. Quick. A rookie. Caden nodded. Mira nodded back and returned to the vials. Not another word. Rain led him further. At the end of the corridor hung a board with assignments for rookies. Rain poked it with his finger. Start small. Herb gathering. Delivery. Caravan escort. Nothing complicated. In a couple of months, we'll put you on your first raid. Caden looked at the board. 3 assignments. Gathering moon mushrooms in the Forest of Shadows. Pay, 15 gilds. Delivering a package to the village of Cross. Pay, 20 gelds. Guard a trade caravan to Lower Pass. Pay, 35 gelds for 3 days. In his past life, he'd taken all 3 in turn. He hadn't noticed anything. He'd just worked as an obedient rookie. But now he knew better. The caravan to Lower Pass. In this caravan, contraband lies beneath the crates of fabric, low-quality mana crystals. On their own, they're worth next to nothing. But in 6 months, this shipment will surface as evidence in a case involving illegal shipments to the Black Lake Dungeon. The Iron Trade Chamber Iron will be looking for whoever organized the channel, and they won't find him. Because in a past life, no one remembered names. Caden will remember. He took all 3 assignments off the board. Rain nodded approvingly. Good job. Enthusiasm is good. Don't overdo it. Caden left headquarters and headed into the Forest of Shadows for moon mushrooms. The task was simple. Gather 20 of them and bring them to the Guild Alchemist. Pay, 15 gilds. The Forest of Shadows began an hour's walk from the city walls. Low trees with black bark, constant twilight even during the day. Weak F and E rank monsters. Nothing dangerous for an adventurer with even the most basic weapon. Caden had no weapon. In his past life, he'd bought a cheap sword for 20 gilds on his very first day. Now all his money had gone to the Tenebra. He picked up a thick stick at the entrance to the forest. The golden window showed an oak stick. Value, 0 gilds. He smirked and went deeper in. Moon mushrooms grew on the tree roots, pale blue caps the size of a palm. They glowed in the dark. Finding them wasn't hard. He gathered them into a canvas bag and thought, 15 gil for the mushrooms, 20 for delivery, 35 for the caravan. A total of 70 gil for the first week if he worked non-stop. At this rate, he'd earn enough for his first useful skill in 2 months. Too long. He needed another source of income. Quick, discreet. He'd gathered 20 mushrooms in 2 hours. On the way back, his golden window flashed. Attention. Undervalued asset detected within a 30-meter radius. Caden stopped. He looked around. Trees, rocks, moss. Nothing special. The window displayed an arrow. He followed the direction and stopped a minute later in front of an ordinary-looking boulder. Something was glinting beneath it. He bent down and dug through the dirt with his hands. A stone, dark green with silver veins, the size of a chicken egg. The golden window displayed unprocessed mana core, quality C rank, market price 0 gelds, reason unknown to the market, unclassified, fair price 1,800 gelds. Caden clenched the stone in his hand. A mana core, crystallized magical energy. They were found in dungeons on the middle and deep levels. For a novice, finding one like this on the surface in the forest was nearly impossible. Nearly. In 2 years, scientists will discover that a mutation in the dungeons is pushing magical energy outward. Mana cores will start to be found in ordinary forests and fields. Their price will plummet. But right now, this stone was worth a month and a half of work for a B-rank mercenary. The problem was that he had to sell it the right way. If a 19-year-old brought a C-rank mana core to an open shop, they'd bombard him with questions. Where from? Where he found it? Who helped him? And then they'd rob him in an alley on the way back. Caden put the stone in his pocket and headed back to the city. He sold the mushrooms to an alchemist, got 15 guilds, balance 62 guilds. Then he didn't go to headquarters or to his little room. He went to Rat Alley, the filthiest place in the lower city. A narrow passage between 2 warehouses. This is where the buyers of stolen goods worked. Fence. People who didn't ask questions. Caden knew one of them, a small, skinny man named Finch. In his past life, Caden had never gone to him. He was too honest, too naive. In this life, honesty was a luxury he couldn't afford yet. He found Finch in the back room of a tea shop. The little man was sitting at a table, counting copper coins. Caden sat down across from him. He placed a rag on the table. He unfolded it. The mana core glowed green. Finch stopped counting. His eyes went wide, then narrowed. "Where'd you get that?" Caden didn't blink. "That's not your question. Your question is how much?" Finch leaned closer. He examined the stone, rubbed it with his finger, sniffed it, leaned back. 800. Caden knew the stone was worth 1,800. But he also knew that Finch would take his cut and that there was no point in arguing. 800 gelds for a stone he'd found for free. 1,000. Finch grimaced. 900. And I don't know your face. Caden nodded. Finch counted out the coins. 900 gelds. Gold rounds stamped with a moon. Each coin smelled of someone else's blood. Such is the economy of Velgard. Caden walked out of the tea shop with pockets full of gold and a heart full of cold calculation. The golden window updated his balance. 962 geld. In a single day, he had earned more than he had in the first 2 months of his previous life. But this was only the beginning. That evening, in his cramped room, he sat on the bed and looked at the list of skills. Reading Micro-Expressions Level 1, 120 gil. Reading Micro-Expressions Level 2, 350 gil. Reading Micro-Expressions Level 3, 600 gil. In his past life, he hadn't known how to read people. He believed in smiles. He believed in words. He believed that a captain who calls you brother wouldn't send you to your death. He wouldn't believe that anymore, but it was too early to buy it now. The system warned him. You can't buy a skill if you lack a basic understanding. Caden couldn't read faces. He needed practice, at least a little. He stood up, left the cubbyhole, went to the nearest tavern, sat in a corner with a mug of cheap beer and began to watch. For 3 hours he sat and watched people. How a merchant wrinkles his nose when he names a price he considers too high. How the girl at the next table looks away to the left when she tells her friend a story that isn't quite true. How the bartender clenches his teeth when a drunken adventurer raises his voice. Micro-expressions, body language, All those things he'd studied long ago in another life on Earth, in courses for investment analysts. You have to read a client's face. You have to see when a partner is bluffing. You have to sense the moment when a deal falls apart. He stayed until closing time. Then he returned to his cubbyhole and lay down. Tomorrow, a package delivery to the village of Cross. The day after tomorrow, a caravan to Lower Pass. In a week, he'll have enough funds to buy his first skill. And in 3 months, he'll have 10,000 guilds. And then the real game will begin. Delivery to the village of Cross took a day and a half. 8 hours on foot along the road. The package turned out to be a wooden box the size of a head, heavy, sealed with wax bearing the Chamber of Commerce emblem. Recipient: Senior Surveyor of the Village of Cross, a certain Walter Hope. Caden carried the box and thought. In his past life, he had delivered it without a second thought. He received 20 guilds and left. Now, the golden window showed something else. The contents of the box. A cartographic kit. Estimated value, 40 gil. Contains a hidden item, a sealed envelope. Addressee: Lord Marcus Devereux, Administrator of the Southern District. Caden walked along the road and thought. An envelope in a box of tools. The village's senior surveyor is sending the letter directly to the district administrator, bypassing all intermediate authorities. That meant one of two things: either private correspondence or a communication channel that shouldn't exist on paper. He delivered the box. Walter Hope turned out to be a heavy-set man with a red face and small eyes. He accepted the package and didn't even look at Caden, signed for it, slammed the door. Caden stood in the doorway and memorized the details. Name, address, the connection to Lord Devereux. This information alone was worth nothing. But in 11 months, Lord Devereux would be arrested for illegally renting out the dungeons, and then every name in his network would become currency. 20 guilders for delivery. Caden received them and headed back. On the way back, he stopped at a roadside and sat in the corner again. 3 hours of observing faces, caravanners, soldiers, peasants. Every day, he trained his eyes. He learned to see what people hide behind their facial expressions. The golden window lit up periodically. Basic understanding of micro-expression reading. 18%. Threshold for purchasing level 1. 25%. Just a little more. Upon returning to Hiron, he immediately headed to headquarters. A mission to escort a caravan was posted on the board. Departure tomorrow morning. 3 days to the Lower Pass and back. Payment, 35 guilds. Caden took the sheet down and signed up. The caravan set out at dawn. 4 wagons, 2 drivers, 3 guards, including Caden. The other 2 were more experienced. A swordsman named Torin, E rank. A spearman named Dell, also E rank. Both looked at Caden with his stick and smirked. The first day passed without incident. The road was quiet. Monsters hadn't appeared in this area for several months. During a rest stop, Caden approached the carts. 4 of them, 3 loaded with crates of fabric. The 4th was heavier than the rest. He looked at it through the gold window. Contents: cotton fabrics. Value: 200 guilds. Hidden cargo: low-quality mana crystals, 40 units. Value: 320 guilds. Markings: none. Status: contraband. There it was, those very crystals. In his past life, he had walked past this cart dozens of times and noticed nothing. Now, he saw everything. 40 unmarked mana crystals, no paperwork, transported under the guise of fabrics. Someone in Hiron had organized a channel for supplying mana, bypassing the trade guild. In 6 months, this channel will be exposed. The chamber will launch an investigation, and the person who knows the names of the carriers and the routes will be able to sell that information for a high price, or use it for something bigger. Caden memorized the wagon numbers, the drivers' names, the route. He didn't touch a thing. He didn't even get closer than 5 paces to the second wagon. Information is valuable only as long as it remains a secret. On the second day of the journey, the caravan carried stopped at a fork in the road. The left path led to the lower pass, the right one toward the Black Forest. No one went into the Black Forest unless they had to. The Black Lake Dungeon had opened there 2 years ago. D rank. Monsters periodically strayed beyond its borders. Torin spat. I don't like it here. It's quiet. He was right. A minute later, 3 figures emerged from the bushes on the right. 2 men with swords, 1 woman with a bow. Bandits, or worse. The golden window assessed them instantly. First, swordsman. Value, 400 gelds. Second, swordsman. Value, 350 gelds. Third, archer. Value, 600 guilders. Total, 1,350 guilders. Thorin and Del together were worth 900. Caden with his staff was worth 0. The odds were bad. But Caden remembered this moment. In his past life, the bandits had taken part of the cargo and left. No one was hurt. The caravanners paid a ransom. Everyone kept quiet because the contraband in the wagons was a secret from the guards. But this time, Caden saw something else. The archer. The golden window displayed an additional line. Hidden status. Informant for the trade chamber. The bandit was working for the chamber. This wasn't a random ambush. It was a route check. The chamber suspected smuggling but had no proof. The archer was supposed to gauge the caravanners' reaction. If they paid the ransom without haggling, it meant they were carrying something illegal, and they had something to hide. Caden lowered his staff. He took a step back. Let things take their course. Torin drew his sword. Del took his position. The bandit leader. Tall, with a jagged scar on his cheek. He offered the standard demand. 100 guilders, and you're free to go. The head driver turned pale. He looked at the wagons. He looked at the bandits. He reached into his pocket. Quickly. Too quickly for a man carrying ordinary cloth. Caden watched the archer. Her eyes narrowed slightly when the driver paid without a single word of protest. She remembered. In 6 months, this information landed on the desk of the head of the chamber's investigative department. The bandits left. The caravan moved on. Torin cursed under his breath. Del was silent. Caden was silent too. He was thinking about something else. The archer informant. If he found her later and offered her a partnership. No, too soon, too risky. He was still a nobody. A rankless rookie with a stick instead of a sword. First, he needed a base. Money, skills, reputation. Then connections. The caravan reached Lower Pass on the 3rd day. Caden received his 35 guilds. Balance, 1,017 guilds. On the way back, he stopped by the Lower Pass market. A small town, a dozen shops. Nothing interesting at first glance, but the gold window was working non-stop. A steel dagger. Market price, 30 guilds. Fair price, 28 guilds. Overpriced. Light chainmail. Market price, 150 guilds. Fair price, 90 guilds. Overpriced. Small healing potion. Market price, 10 gil. Fair price, 10 gil. A fair price. And then, in the corner of the old armorer's shop, he saw it. A worn book in a leather binding. It lay beneath a stack of rusty arrowheads. No one was looking at it. The Golden Window. Master Alchemist Sun Park's Recipe Journal. Market price, 5 guilds. Fair price, 4,200 guilds. Caden held his breath. Sun Park. Hana Song's father. The apothecary who would hang himself in 8 months over fake debts. His recipe journal. Right here, in a junk dealer's shop in a backwater town. It was impossible. But the system was never wrong. The recipes inside this journal were worth a fortune, because Sun Park wasn't just an apothecary. He was one of the last masters who knew the potion formulas of the Second Era. Formulas that were thought to be lost. Caden took the book. His hands didn't tremble. He approached the gunsmith. "How much for this notebook?" The old man glanced at it. H grunted. "5 coins. Take it." Caden paid and left. He hid the book under his jacket, pressed it against his ribs. 4,200 gelds for 5 coins. But it wasn't just about the money. This book was the key to Hanasong. In 8 months, her father would die. She would be left alone, without money, without a home, without a future. In her past life, she had starved to death in the slums, and Caden had never known about it. In this life, he held in his hands the reason to reach out to her before everything fell apart. And not with charity, with a purpose. He walked along the road back to Hiron and thought. Sun Park's recipe journal. If used correctly, it could recreate the formulas for potions that haven't been produced in 200 years. The potion market would be turned upside down. Whoever controls these formulas controls half of Velgard's alchemy industry. But for that, he needs an alchemist. A real one. Someone who understands Sun Park's notes. His daughter. Balance. 1,012 gelds. The golden window flashed. Basic understanding of micro-expression reading. 24%. Almost there. One more evening at the tavern and the threshold will be reached. Caden quickened his pace. On the evening of the 4th day, Caden sat in the Copper Cat Tavern and watched the people. The last evening of training. He counted the bartender's blinks as he quoted the price. He watched the merchant's fingers as he shuffled coins under the table, thinking no one was watching. He noticed how the waitress pursed her lips every time she walked past the table of drunken mercenaries. The golden window flashed. Basic understanding of reading micro-expressions. 25%. Threshold reached. Skill available for purchase. Reading micro-expressions, level 1. Price, 120 geld. Caden didn't wait. Buy. The window flashed gold. Balance. 892 geld. And the world changed. Not outwardly, inside his head. As if someone had removed a thin film from his eyes that had been there his whole life. The bartender. Tension at the corners of his mouth. A half-second pause before naming the price. He's marking it up by 10% and he knows it. The merchant at the table. His pupils dilate as he counts the coins. Not out of greed, out of fear. He's waiting for someone he owes. The waitress. A micro twitch of her eyebrows every time she passes the 3rd table. Not disgust. Habitual weariness. She's been working here a long time and is tired, but she won't leave. Caden finished his beer. He stood up. He walked out. Now he saw what he hadn't seen before. Every face became an open book. Not completely. The first level provided only the basics. But the basics were enough to distinguish lies from the truth 7 times out of 10. He spent the next 3 days in rookie mode. He went to headquarters. He smiled. He bowed. He took on small tasks. He gathered herbs. He cleaned weapons in the armory for an extra 5 gil a day. He carried boxes. On the 6th day, Rain gathered the newbies for a roll call. 4 of them. Caden, a guy named Owen with a wooden shield. A girl named Lynn with a short bow. A tall, quiet guy named Darren with 2 daggers. Rain stood before them and spoke. In a week, you'll have your first joint mission. A first-rank dungeon, the old wolf's lair. Nothing to worry about. A pack of wolf monsters, a boss, an old wolf with a stone hide. A standard cleanup job for newbies. I'll go with you as an observer. Caden listened and watched Rain's face. Micro-expression reading was working. Rain spoke calmly. He smiled. But there was a shadow around his eyes. Barely noticeable. a tension that shouldn't be present in a person describing a simple mission. Rain was hiding something, or knew something about the dungeon that he wasn't saying out loud. Or maybe he was just tired. The first level of the skill didn't provide a definitive answer, just a signal. Something was off. Caden took note. The other newbies accepted the information without question. Owen nodded enthusiastically. Lynn gripped her bow a little tighter. Darren didn't react at all. The golden window assessed them. Owen, 180 gelds. Lynn, 220 gelds. Darren, 310 gelds. Cheap, all three of them. Disposable, by Silverthorn standards, Caden remembered. In his past life, Owen had died on his third assignment. Lynn had left the guild a year later. Darren had vanished without a trace 8 months later. No one looked for any of them. After the meeting, Caden didn't go to his cubbyhole. He went to the lower city, to the part where the streets narrowed to the width of outstretched arms and the roofs of the houses almost closed in overhead. Sadie Park's workshop was located in a dead-end alley behind the laundromat. Small, brick, with a crooked sign. Park and Daughter, weapon repair. It was hot inside. The forge was working. A girl stood at the anvil, short, thin. Her hands were covered in old burns. Her hair was tied back with a dirty rag. She was pounding a red-hot strip of metal with a hammer with a fury that didn't match her size. Sadie Park, 19 years old. At that moment in time, just a blacksmith's apprentice from the lower city, who makes cheap knives for butchers and repairs shovels for farmers. Golden window. Sadie Park. Rating, 280 guilds. Class, blacksmith apprentice level 2. Hidden potential. Rune weapon master, level 0. Locked. Rune weapon master. A class that hadn't existed in Velgard for 100 years. The last rune blacksmith died in the era following the rift. The technology was considered lost, but the system saw potential in this girl with scorched hands. Caden stepped inside. Sadie looked up. Her eyes were wary, the familiar gaze of someone who expects to be cheated. I need a sword. She wiped her hands on her apron. What kind? A simple one. A straight blade, one-handed, medium-grade steel, no frills. She nodded. 30 gelds. It'll be ready in 3 days. Caden looked at her and saw something else through the golden window. A sword stood in the corner of the workshop, not on the counter, not in the display case, in the corner, leaning against the wall, like a useless thing. A blade as long as an arm, dark metal, a simple guard, the hilt wrapped in leather. At first glance, nothing special. The golden window, the nameless sword, the maker. Sadie Park. Price tag, 90 gelds, a fair price. 12,000 gelds. 12,000 gelds, the same as what Rain Calder cost. A sword made by a 19-year-old girl from the lower city cost as much as the captain of one of Hiron's largest guilds. Caden showed no surprise. He looked at the sword. He looked at Sadie. And this one. Sadie glanced toward the corner. She grimaced. This one isn't for sale. It's a failure. The balance is off. The hilt is too light for the blade. I'll melt it down. Caden stood there silently processing those words. A sword worth 12,000 gelds. And she considered it a failure. She was going to melt it down. Because no one had ever told her how much her work was actually worth. He wanted to buy that sword, right now. But that would attract attention. A rankless novice with a sword worth the annual budget of an average guild. Questions, suspicions, problems. Instead, he nodded. Fine. Then just a simple sword for 30. In 3 days. Sadie wrote down the order. Caden walked out. He stopped at the threshold. Without turning around, he said, "Don't melt down that sword. Just hold on to it." Sadie frowned. Why? Caden turned and looked her in the eyes. Because it's worth more than you think. Much more. And he left. Sadie stood in the doorway and watched him go. Then she looked at the sword in the corner, then back at the empty street. Strange guy. On his way back, Caden passed a bookstore in the Middle District. Lame Marcus's shop. A used bookstore and antique shop. The windows were dusty. The door creaked. He went in not because he was looking for anything specific. He went in because the golden window had flashed. An undervalued asset detected. Inside, it smelled of old paper and dust. Marcus sat behind the counter and sneezed. Caden moved along the shelves and looked. The window appraised every book. Most were worth their price or overpriced. And then, on the bottom shelf at the very end, he saw it. A thin book in a worn blue binding. The silver letters on the cover were almost worn away. The Chronicles of the Sublunar Order, Volume 4, The Rift Sector. Golden window. Market price, 8 gelds. Fair price, 320 gelds. Note, contains information of strategic value to the current system carrier. Caden pulled the book out. He opened it. The pages were yellowed. The text was in an old dialect, but he could read it. In his past life, he had spent enough time in libraries. He flipped through a few pages. Records of the monks of the Order of the Moon from 200 years ago. Descriptions of the first years after the rift, mutations in the dungeons, strange artifacts found in the depths, a mention of a certain instrument, the instrument of the Silver Count. Created in Order 2. The page was torn off. The next one began in the middle of a sentence. Caden closed the book. The instrument of the Silver Count, the Silver Count, the name he was going to give his future guild. A coincidence. Or not. He bought the book for 8 guilds. Marcus didn't even look at the cover. Balance. 849 guilds. Caden returned to his cubbyhole. He placed the book next to Sun Park's journal. He looked at the wall with the names. 38. He had already seen 2 of them. Mira Hale, Sadie Park. 36 left. He lay down and closed his eyes. In 4 days, the first dungeon run with Rain Calder. The man who, in a past life, had sent him to his death. Now they would go together, and Rain would be watching. And Caden would play the role of the weak rookie, a role that would save his life. Old Wolf's Den was a 2-hour walk north of Hiron. The entrance to the dungeon looked like a crack in the rock, a crack 2 men tall. Cold air flowed from it, smelling of wet wool. Caden stood before the entrance and felt the sword in his hand tremble slightly. Not from fear, because the hilt was cheap and poorly fitted. Sadie had given him the sword yesterday, a simple blade for 30 gold. Honest work, but soulless. Ordinary iron for an ordinary task. Owen, Lynn, and Darren stood nearby. All 3 were silent. Owen was crumpling the edge of his shield with pale fingers. Lynn was checking her bowstring for the 3rd time. Darren stood motionless with 2 daggers at his belt, staring into the darkness. Behind them all stood Rain Calder. Caden didn't turn around but could feel his presence, heavy, watchful. Rain was observing. The golden window displayed the dungeon data. Dungeon, Old Wolf's Lair, Rank 1. Levels 3. Monsters, Shadow Wolves, Stone Wolves. Boss, Old Wolf, Stonehide. Recommended party strength, 1,500 gelds. Current party strength, Owen, 180. Lynn, 220. Darren, 310. Caden, 140 plus the micro-expression reading skill. Rain, 12,000. Observer. Total without observer, 850 gelds. Just over half the recommended amount. Caden knew this was intentional. Silverthorn always sent newbies into dungeons slightly harder than they were ready for. Officially, it was called toughening up. In reality, it was a selection process. Those who survived stayed. Those who didn't. Optimization. Rain would only intervene if someone was on the brink of death. Maybe. If he deemed it necessary. Caden remembered. In his past life, this raid had gone badly. Owen had suffered a laceration on his leg from a wolf's fangs. Lynn had broken 2 ribs when the boss struck her with its tail. Darren had fared the best of all, but after the raid, he remained silent for 3 days and didn't leave his room. Rain recorded the result as a success. Everyone was alive. Mission accomplished. No one cared that the newbies were left with fear and trauma afterward. In this life, Caden wasn't going to let the same thing happen. He turned to the group. Listen, I know we're all newbies, but before we go in, let's agree on a formation. Owen looked at him in surprise. Lynn frowned. Darren turned his head slightly. Rain stood silently behind him. Caden continued. Owen up front with the shield. His job is to hold the line and not let the wolves break through. Lynn behind him. She shoots at anyone flanking us. Darren to Owen's left. Daggers are good for finishing off enemies, but not for head-on combat. Only strike those who are already on Owen. I'll be the right flank. Owen opened his mouth. And the captain? Caden didn't turn around. The captain is an observer. He won't intervene until someone starts dying. Silence. The 3 rookies exchanged glances. Each of them knew this. It's just that no one had said it out loud. Lynn was the first to nod. Logical. Darren nodded silently. Owen swallowed and raised his shield higher. All right. Caden felt Rain's gaze on the back of his neck. Heavy, intense. A rookie taking command on the very first raid. It was risky. It drew attention. But the alternative was letting 3 people get hurt because no one had voiced a plan. He took that risk. They entered the dungeon. It was dark inside. Owen lit a torch. The light revealed walls of gray stone, a wet floor, a low ceiling. They had to duck. The smell grew stronger, wet fur, blood, stale food. The first level of the dungeon was a corridor, long and narrow, perfect for an ambush. Caden walked on the right and counted his steps. In his past life, the first pack had appeared 120 steps after the entrance. 90. 100. 110. 115. He raised his hand. Stop! Owen froze. Lynn drew her bowstring. Darren drew his daggers. Silence. 1 second. 2. Yellow eyes flashed from the darkness ahead. 4 pairs. Shadow wolves, the size of a calf, black fur, fangs as long as a finger. They pounced simultaneously, fast, silent. But the group was ready. Owen raised his shield. The first wolf slammed into him and bounced off. Owen held his ground. Lynn released an arrow. It struck the second wolf in the side. It yelped and slowed down. Darren lunged to the left and plunged his dagger into the throat of the third wolf, which was trying to get around the shield. Caden moved to the right. The fourth wolf was coming at him. Golden opportunity. Shadow wolf. Assessment. 80 gelds. He waited. The wolf leaped. Caden stepped aside, a movement he knew from a past life. 5 years of fighting. 5 years of dodging. His body was young and weak, but his instincts remained. The wolf flew past. Caden spun around and struck its hind leg with his sword. He didn't kill it. He wounded it. The wolf stumbled. Limping, it turned for a second attack. Lynn finished it off with an arrow to the eye. 4 wolves in 30 seconds. Clean. Owen was breathing heavily. Lynn was reloading her bow. Darren was wiping his dagger on the dead wolf's fur. Rain stood behind them, silent. Caden glanced at him over his shoulder. Micro-expressions, eyebrows slightly raised. The right corner of his mouth twitched. Surprise. Subtle, but noticeable. Rain hadn't expected the newbies to handle it so cleanly, or that Caden would be the one who organized the fight. Caden turned away. He couldn't show too much. He had to look like a guy who'd gotten lucky with the formation, not like an experienced tactician. They moved on. The second level was wider. A cave with stone pillars. There were more wolves here, 6. But the formation worked. Owen held his ground. Lynn fired. Darren finished them off. Caden covered the flank and made sure no one got hurt. He could have killed them faster. His body was weak, but he knew where to strike, where to aim, how to move to avoid getting hit. 5 years of combat experience hadn't been erased by regression, but he struck only as much as was necessary to help the group. No more, no less. Third level, the boss room. A circular cave with a high ceiling. In the center, on a stone platform, lay the old wolf. Huge, 3 times larger than usual. Its fur was gray, covered in growths of dark stone. Its eyes were murky yellow. It raised its head when they entered and growled. The sound echoed through the floor and walls. Owen turned pale. Lynn took a step back. Darren gripped his daggers. Golden Window. Old Wolf. First rank dungeon boss. Rating 900 gelds. Skill Stone Skin level 3. Skill Roar of Suppression level 2. Weak points: eyes, hock joints, lower throat. Recommended damage to pierce the hide. 250 gelds at once. Caden did the math. None of them could pierce the hide alone. Even the 4 of them together barely managed it. But he had information and a plan. Don't panic. Listen. Its hide is like stone. Headshots are useless. Eyes and throat, those are the only soft spots. Lynn, aim for the eyes. Don't rush. 1 accurate shot is better than 5 quick ones. Owen, don't try to block it with your shield. You won't hold out. Dodge. Distract it. Darren, you're the fastest. When Lynn gets hit in the eye, he'll jerk his head. At that moment, his throat will be exposed. Hit him there. I'll take out his hind legs. 3 people were watching him. A rookie giving orders with the confidence of a veteran. Lynn opened her mouth to object. Then she closed it. She looked at the boss. She looked at Caden. She nodded. Old Wolf leaped down from the ledge. The floor shook. Owen darted to the left. Wolf struck with his paw where he had been standing. The stone cracked. The force of the blow was monstrous. Lynn fired her first arrow. It hit the cheek. The arrow bounced off the stone. The second, near the eye, stone again. The third, it hit, right in the right eye. The wolf roared. It jerked its head to the right. Its throat opened for a second. Darren leaped. 2 daggers plunged beneath the jaw. Blood, hot, black. The wolf twitched. The daggers went deep, but not deep enough. The boss was resilient. It turned on Darren. Caden saw it. The rear right leg, the joint, the only place where the stone didn't cover the flesh. He struck. He put all the strength of his young body into a single slashing blow at the joint. The sword sliced into the unprotected flesh. The leg buckled. The wolf collapsed onto its right side. Without hesitation, Owen lunged forward and struck the second eye with the edge of his shield. Lynn fired 2 more arrows into the exposed throat. Darren yanked the daggers upward, widening the wound. The wolf twitched one last time and fell silent. Silence. Only the heavy breathing of the 4 novices and the sound of dripping blood. Caden stood over the boss's corpse and looked at the golden window. Loot. Old Wolf's core. Value, 200 gilds. Stone slab, 3 pieces. Value, 45 gelds each. Boss's wolf fang. Value, 120 gelds. Total, 455 gelds for the group, plus the quest payment, 25 gelds for each rookie. According to Silverthorn's rules, the loot is divided as follows: 40% to the guild, 60% split evenly among the group. That meant that out of 455 guilds of loot, the group would get 273.68 each, plus 25 for the quest payment. Total, 93 guilds per person, for 2 hours of mortal danger. Caden looked at Rain. The captain was standing by the wall, smiling. "Good work, little brother." Caden read his face. The surprise was already gone. Something else had taken its place. Calculation. Rain looked at Caden the way a merchant looks at merchandise. He was evaluating him, not as a person, as a resource. This guy knows how to lead. That means he can be made head of intelligence. That means he can be sent in first. Again. Caden smiled back. "Thanks, Captain. We wouldn't have made it without your guidance." A lie on autopilot. Rain hadn't taught them anything. He just stood there and watched. But that was the game. Praise the one who thinks of himself as a teacher, and he won't notice that the student is already smarter. They emerged from the dungeon. The sun stung their eyes after the darkness. Owen sat down on the ground and laughed with relief. Lynn smiled for the first time all day. Darren. Darren walked over to Caden. He stood silently beside him. Then he said, "You knew where to strike." No question. A statement. Caden looked at him. Lucky. Darren tilted his head slightly. Micro-expressions. He didn't believe it. But he didn't press the issue. He turned and walked over to the others. Caden watched him go and thought. Darren. In his past life, he disappeared after 8 months. No one knew where. Maybe it's worth finding out. On the way back to the city, Caden walked last. He was counting in his head. The balance after the raid would be about 942 geld, plus 93 for the loot and the quest. Total, 1,035. A few more small quests in a week, then sell some of the Tenebra when the price goes up a bit. By the end of the month, he'll hit 2,000. By the end of the second month, 5,000, if he gets lucky with fines. By the end of the third month, 10,000, the first milestone, the amount at which he'll no longer be considered a penniless newbie, the amount at which he can start building. The golden opportunity has flashed by. Daily report. Total expenses for the week, 178 geld. Total income for the week, 1,093 geld. Net profit, 915 guilders. System recommendation. Increase the share of investments in long-term assets. Current portfolio is overloaded with cash. Caden smirked. The system gave financial advice as if it were an investment fund analyst. Maybe, in a sense, it was. He walked the city. A long road lay ahead. 3 months until his first serious capital. A year until his own guild. 2 years until the exposure of Rain Calder. And somewhere along that path, he needed to find the answer to a question he was still afraid to ask. Why the system had chosen him specifically, and what it would demand in return. Caden led the first raid of a group of newbies into the Old Wolf's Lair dungeon. He organized the formation and directed the battle against the boss using knowledge from his past life. The group emerged victorious without serious injuries. Rain Calder began to view Caden as a valuable asset. Darren suspected that Caden knew more than he was letting on. Balance. Approximately 1,035 guilds. 2 weeks had passed since the first raid. Caden lived according to the rhythm he had set for himself. Missions in the morning, trading in the afternoon, observing people in taverns in the evening, writing on the wall at night. Names, dates, connections. His balance grew slowly but surely. Small missions brought in 20 to 30 guilds a day. Finds in the Forest of Shadows added just as much. The system reliably highlighted undervalued assets within a 30-meter radius, and Caden learned to walk around the city in circles to cover as much ground as possible. A silver hairpin in a trash heap behind the tavern. Fair price, 80 gil. Market value, 0. He picked it up and sold it to Finch for 50. A cracked mana crystal in a gutter in the lower city. Fair price, 40 gelds. Picked it up. Sold it for 25. Every coin went into the piggy bank. By the end of the third week, the balance stood at 1,840 gelds. But Caden wasn't thinking about money. He was thinking about Mira Hale. Every day he stopped by Silverthorn headquarters and walked past the medical office. Mira was sitting at her desk, sorting through vials, writing prescriptions, treating the rookie's bruises and cuts, working from morning till night for a fixed salary of 200 gelds a month. 200 gelds for a person whose fair market value was 3,400. The guild paid her 17 times less than she was worth, and she didn't complain, because she didn't know her worth. Like Sadie, like half the people in this world. They didn't know their worth and so sold themselves for pennies. On the 24th day, Caden walked into the doctor's office. Mira looked up. Is something hurting? No. Caden sat down on a stool by the wall. I need a consultation. Mira frowned. Medical. Alchemical. She froze. She tilted her head slightly. Why would a novice need an alchemical consultation? Caden pulled a sheet of paper from his bosom. On it, he had hand-copied a recipe from Sun Park's journal. A second-era painkiller. A formula that hadn't been produced in 200 years. 10 times more effective than any modern equivalent. He placed the sheet in front of Mira. She took it, began to read. Her eyes widened, her fingers trembled slightly. She read slowly. Then she reread it. Then she looked up at Caden with an expression he had never seen in her before. Where did you find this? It doesn't matter. The question is different. Can it be done? Mira looked at the recipe again. She bit her lip. Theoretically, yes. The ingredients are available, except for one. Third distilled moon essence. It's expensive. Very expensive. Caden nodded. How much? Mira calculated in her head. About 200 gelds per dose. The result? One dose relieves any pain for 6 hours. No side effects, no addiction. Caden knew that. He also knew else. Mira Hale's mother was sick. Chronic pain in her joints and bones. A disease that was slowly eating her away from the inside. Regular painkillers helped for an hour. Then the pain returned even stronger. Mira visited her mother every evening and brewed decoctions that had almost no effect. And there was nothing she could do. Because the medicine that would help cost more than she earned in a year. Caden stood up. Make it. I'll pay for the ingredients. Mira froze. The sheet of paper in her hands trembled slightly. Why do you need this? Caden looked into her eyes. Micro-expressions. Distrust. Hope. Fear that it was a trap. Fear that it was true. I need a healer who knows how to do things that no one else does anymore. You're the only one in this city who can read this prescription and put it together. I'm not paying for the service. I'm paying for the profession. Mira was silent for a long time. Then she folded the sheet. Carefully, neatly, like someone used to handling valuable things. I need 3 days to prepare. Caden nodded and left. 200 gelds for ingredients. His balance would drop to 1,640. But he wasn't buying a potion. He was buying Mira Hale. Her trust, her loyalty, her hidden blood alchemist class, which no one would ever discover unless she was given a chance. 3 days later, Mira brewed the first batch. A second-era painkiller. A dark blue liquid in a small vial. Caden came into the study that evening. Mira was standing at the table, staring at the vial as if she couldn't need it was real. I'll take this to Mom today, she said it quietly, almost in a whisper. Caden didn't say anything. He just put another 400 gelds on the table, for the next 2 doses, and spare ingredients. Mira looked at the money. She looked at him. Her eyes were shining, but she didn't cry. She wasn't the type to cry. She clenched her jaw tightly and nodded. You're different than you seem. Caden allowed himself a barely perceptible smile. Everyone says that. He left. Balance, 1,240 gelds. The next day he went to Finch, sold a few more finds. The balance returned to 1,500. On the 30th day since the regression, he sat in his cramped room and took stock of the first month. Balance, 1,500 gelds. Skills, reading micro-expressions, level 1. Assets, 3 sacks of Tenebra. The price is rising. Sun Park's Recipe Journal, strategic asset. Chronicle of the Order of the Moon, information asset. Connections, Mira Hale. Initial trust level, Sadie Park. Acquaintance, Finch. Business contact. Threats, Rain Calder is starting to take notice. The system issued a warning. The captain's attention toward the carrier has increased by 15% over the past 2 weeks. Recommendation: reduce activity. Demonstrate typical rookie behavior. Caden rubbed the bridge of his nose. Rain. He'd caught his attention too quickly. He needed to slow down, become gray and invisible again. For the next 2 weeks, he played the part perfectly. He took only simple assignments. He didn't take command on raids. He let others make decisions, even when he knew they were wrong. On the second dungeon raid, when Owen suggested a stupid tactic, he said nothing. The group managed, but Lynn cut her hand. Caden clenched his teeth and said nothing. The price of invisibility. Every day after missions, he went to the market. Not to buy, just to look. The golden window was always open. He mapped out Hiron's market prices in his head. What was overpriced? What was underpriced? Where to buy cheap and sell for more. Classic arbitrage. On the 42nd day, he found what he was looking for. An old alchemist named Master Graves, a former court apothecary. He'd gone bankrupt 3 years ago when the Chamber of Commerce imposed new taxes on independent alchemists. Now he sat in a basement on the outskirts of the Middle Quarter and drank. He had a collection of recipes, 112 formulas, most of them obsolete, but 17 of them. A golden window lit up. 17 recipes with a total fair value of 28,000 gelds. The market price of the entire collection. 0. Because Graves considered them worthless junk. Caden came to him with a bottle of fine wine, sat down across from him, poured 2 glasses. Master Graves, I heard you're selling your collection of recipes. The old man looked at him with cloudy eyes. Who are you? A buyer. Graves snorted. Nobody needs these scraps of paper. The guild has banned independent production. Recipes without a license are just paper. Caden nodded. How much for the lot? Graves finished his glass. He looked at the bottle. He looked at Caden. 300 gelds, and leave the bottle here. Caden took out the money. 300 gelds for recipes worth 28,000. Return on investment, 9,000%. He took the stack of yellowed sheets tied with twine. He returned to the cubbyhole. He laid them out on the table. 17 formulas, strengthening potions, slow-acting poisons, regeneration elixirs, formulas for enchanting weapons. Each recipe was worth a fortune in the right hands. Balance, 1,200 guilds, minus 300 for the recipes, plus small earnings over 2 weeks. Total, about 1,400. Slowly. But his portfolio of assets was growing, and every asset was a seed that would turn into a tree in a few months. Caden looked at the wall, 38 names, 2 lines of communication established. Mira, Sadie, 36 left. He picked up a piece of chalk and added 2 new names. Master Graves, information source. Finch, trade channel. Then he circled another name from the old list. Hannah Song. In 6 months, her father would hang himself. In 8, she'd be out on the street. But Caden already had her father's journal in his hands, the key to her. All that was left was to wait for the right moment. Or not. Maybe not wait. Maybe come sooner. while her father was still alive, while it was still possible to change something. Caden lay down on the bed and closed his eyes. The golden window hung in the darkness. Quiet, patient, like an accountant waiting for a client to make a decision. On the 50th day, Caden decided it was time. He put on a clean shirt, his only one. He pulled his hair back. He put Sun Park's prescription journal in his pocket. And he went to the Eastern Quarter, the district of apothecaries and herbalists. The streets here smelled of mint and sulfur. Signs with the names of shops and workshops, flasks and retorts in the display cases. Sun Park's shop stood on the corner, a 2-story building with a green roof. The sign, Park and Daughter, Alchemy and Pharmacy. The door was open. Inside it smelled of wormwood and something burnt. Behind the counter stood a man in his 50s, thin, stooped, dark circles under his eyes. His hands trembled slightly as he rearranged the vials. Sun Park, Hannah's father. The man who, in 6 months, would hang himself in this very shop. Golden window. Sun Park. Appraisal. 1,800 gelds. Class. Master Alchemist Level 6. Status. Financial crisis. Debt. 4,200 geld. Creditor. Van Wright Trading House. Note: 60% of the debt is fabricated. Caden looked at this man and saw what he could not see in his past life. A debt of 4,200 geld, more than half of which is fake. Van Wright Trading House. Competitors who had decided to destroy an independent alchemist, not with a sword, but with paper. Classic corporate raiding. Buy up the debts, forge receipts, strangle him with interest, take over the business. Caden knew this scheme. On Earth, he had seen it dozens of times. Large funds devoured small players in exactly the same way. Next to Sun Park, a red-haired girl sat at a table in the back of the shop, grinding something in a mortar. Hannah Song. 20 years old, alive, healthy, with a fire in her eyes that would be extinguished forever in 6 months. Golden window. Hannah Song. Rating: 1,200 gelds. Class: Apprentice Alchemist. Level 3. Hidden Potential. Master of Poisons and Elixirs. Level 0. Locked. Caden approached the counter. Sun Park raised his tired eyes to him. "How can I help you?" "I need advice on a recipe. A private consultation." Sun Park frowned. "We don't take private orders. Only the standard assortment." Caden placed 10 gilds on the counter. "For your time." Sun Park looked at the coins, then at Caden. Then he took the money and nodded toward the back room. Hannah looked up from the mortar. She looked at Caden with an expression he read instantly. Wariness. Defensive aggression. She was used to that only creditors and con artists ever came to see her father. In the office, Caden sat down across from Sun Park. He took out a magazine. He placed it on the table, cover up. Sun Park looked at the magazine. His face changed. The color drained from his cheeks. His hands stopped trembling. He recognized the cover. "Where did you get this?" "It's yours." Sun Park reached out. He touched the cover with his fingertips, as if he were touching something alive. "I lost it 3 years ago, when I was moving out of the old workshop. I thought it had been thrown out with the trash." Caden was silent. He gave him time. Sun Park opened the journal. He flipped through the pages. His eyes darted across the lines. Caden saw the tremor return to his hands, but this was a different tremor, not from fatigue, from excitement. My formulas, my notes, 15 years of work. He looked up. His eyes were wet. "How much do you want for it?" Caden shook his head. "I'm not selling. I'm offering a partnership." Sun Park froze. A partnership. Caden spoke calmly and measuredly, as if in negotiations with an investor. "Master Park, Your debt to the House of Van Ryde amounts to 4,200 gelds. Of that, approximately 2,500 are fabricated. The receipts are forged. Interest has been charged on sums you never received. Silence. Sun Park turned even paler. Where are you from? Caden raised his hand. That's not important. Something else is. In 6 months, Van Ryde will file a lawsuit with the Chamber of Commerce. They'll take your shop, your license, everything, unless you prepare. Sun Park looked at him as if he were a ghost. Caden continued, Here's what I propose. I'll return the journal to you, for free. In exchange, I need 3 things. First, the right to produce and sell potions based on your recipes through my distribution network. Second, to teach your daughter the formulas from the journal, completely, without restrictions. She must know everything you know. Third, when I come to you in 3 months with proof of the forged receipts, you will allow me to represent your interests before the chamber. Sun Park was silent. His hands rested on the journal. His micro-expressions spoke louder than words. Fear, hope, distrust, calculation. Why are you doing this? Caden leaned forward slightly. Because your prescriptions are worth more than the entire Wainwright shop. And because your daughter is more talented than you think. I'm not in the charity business. I invest in people. Sun Park looked at him for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. All right. Caden stood up. He held out his hand. Sun Park shook it, a weak hand, but a firm handshake. As Caden walked out of the office, Han was standing by the door. She had heard. Maybe not everything, but enough. She looked at him with an expression that micro-expression reading decoded as a mixture of anger and confusion. Who are you? Caden looked at her. Red hair, hands stained with alchemy, eyes sharp as a razor. In a past life, this girl died of starvation in the slums. In this one, he had just given her a chance. Your future business partner, if you want. Hannah opened her mouth, closed it. Caden stepped out onto the street. Behind him, he heard Hannah's voice. Dad, who was that? And Sun Park's voice, quiet, broken, but for the first time in a long time, not hopeless. I don't know, but he gave me my life back. Balance, 1,390 gelds, minus 10 for the consultation. The journal was handed over, assets reset to 0. But in its place, Caden received something more valuable, a connection to 2 people who could still be saved. That evening, he returned to his tiny room. He crossed out Sun Park's name on the wall. No, he didn't cross it out. He circled it in green. Green means active. He circled Han's name the same way. Then he stared at Mira's name for a long time. Green, too. 3 names out of 38. The foundation was laid. The next day, Caden went to the artifact market, a small square in the middle district where loot from dungeons was traded. Not high-end, just small stuff. Leftovers after the big guilds had taken the best. This is where newbies and resellers shopped. The gold window was open non-stop. A dagger with a crack. Market price 15. Fair price 14. No. A copper ring with a dull stone. Market price 25. Fair price 22. No. A left leather glove. Market price 8. Fair price 340. Stop. Caden stopped. The glove lay in a pile of junk in the corner of the counter. Old, worn, left, unpaired. Who buys a single glove? The golden window. The silent thief's glove. Artifact. Rank D. Property. Suppresses sound within a 1-meter radius of the hand for 30 seconds. Cooldown 10 minutes. Market price 8. Gelds because no one knows it's an artifact. Fair price 340. Caden bought the glove without haggling. 8 gelds. Put it on his left hand. He clenched his fist, activated it. Silence. complete, absolute. For 30 seconds, the world within a meter of his hand fell silent. Then the sound returned. A D-rank artifact for 8 guilds. Caden walked through the market and thought. This world was full of things people didn't know how to value. Swords that were worth thousands. Gloves that were worth hundreds. People who were worth more than all the gold in Hyron. And they were all lying in a heap of junk because no one saw their true value. Except him. On the 60th day, what Caden had been waiting for happened. A fever broke out in the province of Melford. Not the lunar one, just the usual seasonal one. But the news spread across Hyron in a day, and prices for medicinal herbs shot up. Tenebra rose from 2 guilds to 7 per bundle. Peanuts compared to what would happen in 4 years, but enough to get started. Caden sold a quarter of his stock, 23 bundles at 7 guilds each, 161 guilds, a net profit on his first investment. His balance jumped to 1,540. But the main thing wasn't the money. The main thing was that the market had started moving. Prices for herbs were rising. Demand for potions was increasing. Mira was brewing second-era painkillers, and each dose sold for 300 guilds. Caden took 20% as the investor who had paid for the ingredients. 60 gil per dose. Mira made 2 doses a week, 120 gil in passive income. A small trickle, but a steady one. At the same time, Graves's recipes started paying off. 3 of the 17 formulas turned out to be simple enough for Caden to commission their production from Sun Park. Concentration-enhancing potions, burn ointments with accelerated regeneration, an antidote for swamp snake venom. Simple things, but with a 300% margin because there were no competitors. The formulas were considered lost. Caden sold through Finch. No name, no face, just goods through an intermediary. The balance grew. By the 70th day, it had reached 3,200 gelds. The golden window flashed approvingly. Portfolio diversified. Passive income stable. Recommendation: invest in combat skills. Current combat power of the carrier is critically low. The system was right. Caden earned and traded, but in combat he remained a novice. His body was young and untrained. Experience from his past life allowed him to dodge and spot weak spots, but he lacked physical strength. One serious blow, and he'd go down. It was time to buy. He opened the skill list. Basic fencing, level 1, 50 guilds. He had basic sword fighting experience from his past life. The threshold of understanding had been crossed. Buy. Basic fencing, level 2, 200 guilds. Automatically available after purchasing the first level. Buy. Basic endurance, level 1, 40 guilds. Buy. Basic endurance level 2, 160 guilds. Buy. Stealth, level 1, thief class. Price, 80 gelds. Archer class. Price, 300 gelds. Arbitrage. The same skill cost different amounts depending on the class. Caden was not a thief, but the system allowed him to buy skills from any class if he had a basic level of understanding. He spent 3 nights practicing in silence. He moved across the rooftops of the lower city. He hid in the shadows. He learned to walk silently. By the 4th night, his threshold of understanding for stealth had reached 25%. Stealth, level 1, thief class, 80 gelds. Buy. Total spent on skills, 610 gelds. Balance, 2,590 gelds. His body had changed, not outwardly, the effect of smooth water. The skills he had purchased looked as if he had been training them for years. His movements became more precise. His footsteps were quieter. The sword in his hand stopped trembling. To those around him, he simply became a little more agile. A guy who had finally gotten the hang of things. Nothing suspicious. On the 75th day, Rain gathered the group again. Mission: Second-rank dungeon. Gray mist mines. Monsters. Stone golems. Mist hounds. Boss. Mist guardian. Rain spoke and smiled. This time you'll go without an observer. I believe in you. Caden listened and read his face. No shadow this time. Pure confidence. Rain truly believed they could handle it. Or maybe he just didn't care. The group remained the same. Owen, Lynn, Darren, Caden, plus a fifth. Mira Hale. Rain had appointed her the group's healer. Caden looked at her. She gave him a brief nod. Professional. But a shadow flashed across the corner of her lips. Not fear, determination. She wasn't going because Rain had ordered her to. She was going because she wanted to see how Caden performed in combat. The Gray Mist mines were an hour's walk west of Chiron. The entrance to an old mine. Wooden struts, rails for mine cars, the smell of dampness and minerals. The fog began right beyond the entrance. Thick, gray, visibility 3 meters. Caden activated stealth. His movements became silent. He led the way, not because he was the scout, because his skill allowed him to move through the fog without attracting the monster's attention. The golden window showed the outlines of the creatures through the fog. Red dots. 3 stone golems ahead, standing motionless, waiting for a sound. Caden raised his hand. Stop. 3 golems. They react to sound, not to movement. Lynn, shoot the one in the back. When he starts moving, the others will turn toward him. Owen, at that moment, hit the one closest to you in the back. Darren, the one in the middle is yours. I'll cover Mira. They did it. Perfect. Quickly. The golems collapsed one after another. Not a single scratch on the group. Mira stood behind them and watched. Her eyes were wide open. Not from fear, from understanding. Caden knew what he was doing. He knew it all too well. The second level of the mine. Mist hounds. Fast. Invisible in the fog. Appearing out of nowhere. The golden window illuminated 5 red dots. Moving. Encircling. Classic pack tactics. Caden activated the gauntlet. 30 seconds of silence. The hounds lost their bearings. They hunted by sound. In absolute silence, they were blind. 30 seconds was enough for Lynn and Darren to take down 2. Then, the silence ended. The 3 remaining ones rushed at the group. Owen took the first one on his shield. Caden met the second with his sword. Basic fencing level 2 worked. The strike was precise. To the throat. The hound collapsed. Darren finished off the third with 2 daggers to the side. Mira wasn't needed. Not a single injury. They reached the boss in 40 minutes. The Mist Guardian. A massive figure of gray stone and mist. 3 meters tall, arms like columns, eyes. 2 dull blue dots in a stony face. A golden window. The Mist Guardian. A second-rank dungeon boss. Rating 2,800 gelds. Skill, Misty Veil level 4. Skill, Stone Strike level 5. Weak point, mana core in the center of the chest, covered by a triple layer of stone. Recommended party strength, 3,500 guilds. Current party strength without the observer, about 1,800. Not enough. Caden stood there and did the math. Owen won't break the stone. Lynn won't break the stone. Darren might reach the core if the stone cracks. But what to use to break the stone? He looked at his sword. 30 gold pieces. Cheap iron. Against a triple layer of stone, it's like hitting a wall with a stick. He needed a different approach. He looked around. A mine. Old. Wooden supports. Low ceiling. And on the ceiling, cracks. Old. Deep. The mine was on the verge of collapsing in several places. Caden looked up and saw what he needed. Right above the Guardian's head, the ceiling was held up by a single prop. Just one. Lynn, do you see the prop above his head? Lynn squinted through the fog. Yes. Shoot it. All the arrows. One spot. The base. Lynn looked at him. Looked at the ceiling. Got it. Started shooting. First arrow. The wood cracked. Second. Third. Fourth. The Guardian roared and moved toward the group. Owen stepped in the way. The shield cracked under the stone blows. Darren darted to the boss's feet, distracting it. Caden stood and counted the arrows. Fifth. Sixth. The support beam cracked. The ceiling groaned. Caden shouted, "Back! Everyone back!" They jumped back. The ceiling collapsed. A ton of stone crashed right onto the Guardian. A rumble. Dust. Fog mixed with stone dust. Silence. Then a sound. A crack. The Guardian's hand jutted out from under the rubble. It moved, but the stone on his chest cracked. 3 layers became 2, then just 1. The mana core glowed blue through the crack. Darren. Now. Darren lunged forward. 2 daggers entered the crack, found the core. The core burst. The Guardian froze. The hand fell. Silence. Real silence. Owen sat down on the floor. The shield had split in 2. Lynn lowered her bow. Her hands were shaking. Darren stood over the boss's corpse, breathing heavily. Mira stepped forward and began examining Owen. Bruises, nothing serious. Caden stood to the side, staring at the golden window. Loot. The Mist Guardian's core. Appraisal. 800 gelds. Gray Guardian stone, 4 pieces. Appraisal. 120 gelds each. Misty essence. Appraisal. 350 gelds. Total 1,630 gelds. Minus 40% for the guild. 978 gelds for the group. 195 each, plus payment for the quest. A good day. On the way back, Mira walked beside Caden, in silence, for a long time. Then she spoke. "You knew about the prop." Caden didn't turn his head. I looked up. Mira paused. "You always look where others don't." Caden didn't answer. Mira didn't ask again, but she walked beside him, and the distance between them was half a step less than before. End of the 2nd month. Balance. 4,800 guilds. Caden sat in the cubbyhole and stared at the wall. Names. Connections. Arrows connecting them. The cubicle was no longer a place to sleep. It had become a command center. 6 names circled in green. Mira, Hannah, Sun Park, Sadie, Finch, Graves. 6 out of 38. 32 more to go. But right now, his attention was on another name. Layla Winter, former Royal Intelligence Officer. At this moment in time, she was still on active duty, not yet dismissed. Her dismissal would take place in 4 months. She would refuse to falsify the casualty report from the raid on the 4th-ranked dungeon. Her commander would decide she was unreliable. Report. Dismissal. A black mark on her record. No one would hire a former intelligence officer with a mark of insubordination. In 6 months, she'd be working as a mercenary tracker for peanuts. Caden could have waited for her to be discharged, hired her cheaply. But that would have been the same as what everyone else did, exploiting a moment of weakness, buying people when they're at rock bottom. He decided otherwise. The next morning, Caden put on a clean shirt, the same one he had. He'd washed it the night before. He'd dried it by the window. He headed to the upper quarter, to the Royal Intelligence Building, a 3-story white stone structure with narrow windows. Guards at the entrance. 2 soldiers in uniform with silver insignia. Caden approached and stopped. "I'd like to submit a request to hire a tracker for a private assignment." The soldier looked him up and down. A rank-and-file adventurer with no standing wanted to hire an intelligence officer. Absurd. But the procedure existed. Any citizen could submit a request. The problem was that it wasn't cheap. 1,000 gelds for a week of a tracker's work. The soldier handed him a form. Caden filled it out. Assignment. Identify the source of funding for the Silver Thorn Guild. Private. Confidential. Budget. 1,000 gelds. He paid. His balance plummeted to 3,800. 3 days later, he received a reply. The assigned tracker. Senior Lieutenant Layla Winter. Caden wasn't surprised. He knew she would be the one assigned. Intelligence Command considered such private assignments trivial. They were given to those they didn't mind distracting from serious work. Layla was the best, but her boss had already begun pushing her into the background. Preparation for a dismissal she hadn't yet anticipated. The meeting was scheduled at a coffee shop in the middle of the neighborhood. Neutral territory. Caden arrived 10 minutes early. He sat by the window, ordered tea, waited. Layla walked in right on time. Tall, blonde, straight back, hands behind her back, a soldier's habit, cold eyes, gray, a gaze that scanned the room in 2 seconds and memorized the location of all the exits. Golden window. Layla Winter. Rating, 6,800 gelds. Class, Tracker, Level 6. Hidden skill, Analytical gaze, Level 5. Hidden skill, Combat instinct, Level 4. 6,800 gelds, more than half of Rain Calder's value, and that was despite the fact that she was considered a low-ranking officer. Caden pointed to the chair across from him. She sat down, silently. She looked at him with an appraising gaze. Lieutenant Winter, thank you for accepting the assignment. She didn't respond to the courtesy. She got straight to the point. You want to know who's funding the Silver Thorn? Why? A direct question. No beating around the bush. Military training. Caden decided to answer just as directly. Because I'm a member of that guild, and I want to know whose money is sending me into the dungeons. Layla tilted her head slightly. Micro-expressions. Interest. Subtle. Hidden behind a mask of professional indifference. You don't seem like a typical adventurer. Caden allowed himself a hint of a smile. It's a compliment. It's an observation. Silence. 2 seconds. Layla nodded. All right, give me a week. She stood up and left. Not a word too many. No handshake. Pure efficiency. Caden finished his tea and thought. 1,000 gelds for a week's work as the best tracker in the Royal Intelligence Service. If only he had known her true worth back then, in his past life. Then again, in his past life, he had neither the money nor the brains to understand that. While Layla was working, Caden attended to other matters. Sun Park began teaching Hana recipes from the magazine. The girl picked things up quickly. Within 2 weeks, she was already brewing 3 basic potions on her own, using her father's formulas. Caden came to the shop every 3 days. He checked on her. He paid for the ingredients. He talked to Sun Park about the market. The old alchemist was coming back to life before their eyes. The tremor in his hands had lessened. His eyes grew clearer. Hope did amazing things to people. Hana greeted Caden the same way every time. A silent stare. Arms crossed over her chest, lips pressed together. She didn't trust him. She didn't understand why he was doing this. She expected a catch. On his 4th visit, she finally couldn't take it anymore. What do you want from my father? Caden looked at her. Nothing he wouldn't want to give. Hana grimaced. Everyone says that, and then they take everything. Caden nodded. You're right. Everyone says that. But I'm not everyone. In 3 months, you'll see Hana opened her mouth to give a sharp reply. Then she closed it. Because there wasn't a trace of smugness in his voice. Only calm confidence. Like someone who already knows the future. On the 7th day, Layla came for their 2nd meeting. Same tea house. Same spot. She placed a thin folder on the table. The Silver Thorn is funded by 3 sources. First, profits from the dungeons. That makes up 30% of the budget. Second, contracts with aristocratic houses. Security, Escort services, another 30%. Third. Caden was waiting. The third source is unclear. It goes through the front trading company Almer & Sons, registered in the port. Officially, it trades in fabrics. In reality, through it, an amount equivalent to 40% of the guild's budget flows into the silver ship every month. I haven't been able to identify the ultimate beneficiary in a week. I need more time. Caden looked at her. He knew the answer. In his past life, he never found out who was behind Silver Ship. But now, he had a lead. Almer & Sons. The fabric trade, 40% of the budget. Someone very powerful was investing money in the guild that far exceeded its income. Why? Caden closed the folder. Excellent work, Lieutenant. I have one more assignment, if you're ready. Layla looked at him. Micro-expressions, surprise, faint. She hadn't expected a rookie adventurer to appreciate her work. What kind? I want to know who forged the promissory notes of the apothecary Sun Park. Evidence of forgery? Notarial records? Witnesses? Everything needed for a lawsuit in the Chamber of Commerce. Layla raised an eyebrow slightly. This is more serious than the guild's financial trail. This is a criminal investigation. Caden placed a small bag on the table, 1,000 gelds. Layla looked at the money, looked at him. You're spending more than you earn for your rank. Caden didn't blink. I earn more than I show. Pause. Layla put the money away. 2 weeks. She stood up and left. Caden sat and counted. Balance, 2,800 gelds. 2,000 spent on Layla in 2 weeks. Expensive. But the information she would bring was worth 10 times that much. Proof of the forgery of Sun Park's receipts, if they exist, when there is. The Van Wright house will pay, not with money, with reputation. And reputation in Hiron was worth more than gold. On his way back to his little room, Caden stopped by Sadie's workshop. He peeked inside. She was standing at the forge, hammering away, sweat on her face, her hands red from the heat. But her eyes were... A blade lay on the anvil, new, not a commission, personal. She was forging for herself, for pleasure. That sword in the corner, the 12,000th. It was still standing there, not melted down. Sadie looked up, she saw him, she smiled, open, childlike. Without a second thought, he walked in, didn't say why, just stood nearby and watched her work. The golden window cast a soft glow. Every blow of the hammer against the metal, every curve of the blade. And the value, a value Sadie didn't see. She thought she was making an ordinary knife. The system valued it at 400 gelds. 400 gelds for a knife she'd sell for 15. Caden stood and said nothing. He watched, and thought that in this world there were too many people who didn't know the value of what they were doing, and that his work, his real work, wasn't revenge or trade. His work was to show them. 90 days, 3 months since the regression. Balance, 9,600 gelds, 400 to the first milestone. Caden stood on the roof of his shack and looked down on Hiron from above. The city was waking up. Smoke from chimneys, the cries of merchants, the clatter of hooves on the cobblestones, the creaking of carts. 3 months ago, he had stood in the registration hall with a 0 balance and 3 sacks of gray grass. Now he had nearly 10,000 gelds. 3 skills, a portfolio of assets, a network of people who trusted him, and a folder containing information that could destroy at least 2 organizations. Layla had brought the results of the investigation into Sun Park 3 days ago. A folder as thick as a finger, copies of forged receipts with annotations, notarized records with dates that didn't match, witness testimony. A clerk from the house of Van Wright who saw the chief accountant forge signatures. Layla found him in 2 days. The clerk agreed to talk in exchange for a guarantee of safety and 300 guilds. Caden paid. The evidence was ironclad. With it, They could go to the Chamber of Commerce and file a lawsuit. The Van Wright house would lose its license. Sun Park would be free of debt. But Caden wasn't in a hurry. A lawsuit would draw attention right now. To Sun Park, to his recipes, to the man behind the investigation. It was too soon. He needed a little more money, a few more connections, a little more invisibility. Instead of filing a lawsuit, he went to Sun Park and showed him the folder. The old man read it for a long time. His hands were shaking, this time with anger. When he finished, he looked at Caden and, for the first time since they'd met, said what he was thinking. "You saved my family." Caden shook his head. Not yet, but soon. Hannah stood nearby. She was silent. She looked at her father, at the folder, at Caden. Her eyes were dry, but something in them had changed. The wall she had kept between herself and the world had cracked for the first time. Caden put the folder away. "I'll keep it. When the time comes, I'll submit it on your behalf." Sun Park nodded. Caden walked out. At the door, Hannah caught up to him. She grabbed his sleeve. He turned around. She stood there, silent. Then she managed to say, "Thank you." Just one word, the first she'd ever said to him without malice. Caden nodded and walked on. The golden window flickered quietly. His relationship with Hannah Song had improved. Trust level. Initial. He smirked. The system even evaluated that. On the 92nd day, something happened he hadn't expected. He was walking down the corridor of Silver Spear headquarters when a girl emerged from a side passage. Short, shoulder-length chestnut hair, glasses in thin metal frames, a stack of books in her hands. Tall, unsteady. She didn't see where she was going. A collision. The books flew to the floor. The girl gasped. She bent down to pick them up. Caden bent down too. Their hands touched the same book at the same time. She looked up. "Sorry, I'm always—" She didn't finish. She adjusted her glasses, which had slipped down her nose. She looked at him. Golden window. Emily Rain, 23 years old. Rating, 1,400 gelds. Class, Research Historian Level 4. Relation, daughter of Rain Calder, captain of the Silver Spear. Caden froze. Emily Rain. He knew she existed, knew she was a scholar, knew she was studying the Silver Moon Rift. But he hadn't planned to meet her this soon, and he certainly hadn't planned to meet her at the guild headquarters. What was she doing here? She usually worked at the Royal Library. Emily was gathering books. Quickly. Awkwardly. She dropped them again, picked them up. Caden helped. He handed her 3 volumes. She pressed them to her chest. "Thank you. I was taking them to my father. He asked me to find something about the dungeons in the western sector." Rain. He was interested in the dungeons in the western sector. Why? Caden showed no interest. He just smiled. "That's a heavy load. Let me help." "No need. Really. I'm used to it." She smiled, openly, awkwardly, without a hint of calculation. The daughter of the man who burned him alive was smiling at him like a casual acquaintance in the hallway. Caden looked at her and felt nothing. Emptiness. Emily wasn't to blame for what her father did. She didn't even know. But when the truth comes out, when Rain Calder is destroyed, Emily will suffer, inevitably. The traitor's daughter. In Hiron, that's a stigma. The golden window lit up quietly. Hidden potential. Archivist of ancient knowledge. Level 0. Locked. Another person with hidden potential that no one will ever unlock. Caden nodded to her and walked on. He didn't look back, but he remembered. Emily Rain. A name that wasn't on his list on the wall. Now it would be. That same evening, he made up the missing 400 geld. He sold another batch of Tenebra. The price had risen to 10 gelds per bundle. Balance, 10,000 gelds. The first milestone. The golden window flashed solemnly. Achievement. First capital. 10,000 gelds. New opportunities unlocked. Access to C-rank skills. Access to class purchase. Recommended class. Tactician strategist. Price. 8,000 guilds. Threshold of understanding. 67%. Reached. Caden stared at that number. 8,000 for a class. Almost his entire capital. But the tactician strategist class offered something that individual skills did not. Systemic thinking. The ability to see the entire battlefield, to plan 10 moves ahead, to manage a group of 10 people as a single mechanism, for his goals, for building a guild, for the war against the Silver Thorn, for everything that lay ahead. It wasn't just a class, it was a foundation. He closed his eyes, opened them. Buy. Balance. 2,000 gelds. Tactician Strategist Class Level 1 acquired. The world hadn't changed. No flashes, no glow. The effect of smooth water. To everyone around him, he would remain the same guy. But inside his head, a shift had occurred, as if someone had turned on a second screen. Now, when he looked at a group of people, he didn't just see people. He saw positions, roles, weak links, opportunities, connections between them. Patterns that used to take minutes to analyze could now be read in seconds. Caden stepped outside. He stood in the crowd at the market square. He watched. 3 merchants at a stall. 1 dominates, 2 obey. The structure is as clear as day. A guard patrol, 4 of them. The commander in front, 1 lagging behind. The weak link. Fatigue or disloyalty. A group of adventurers at the tavern entrance, 5 of them. No leader. Everyone looking out for themselves. They'll fall apart in 2 raids at most. The tactician strategist saw it all, and that was just the first level. Caden was walking home, lost in thought. 2 months ago, he'd returned to the past with nothing to his name and a head full of the names of the dead. Now he had 2,000 guilds, a combat class, 3 skills, a network of 6 allies, a dossier of incriminating evidence on the Van Wright house, information about the Silver Ship's secret funding, recipes worth tens of thousands, and the name of the girl in glasses who doesn't know her father is a traitor. Balance, 2,000. Low. Temporarily, because the assets he held were worth more than everything he'd spent. Tenebra continued to grow. Mira's potions were selling steadily. Graves' recipes were starting to generate income through Sun Park. And Layla Winter. In 4 months, she'd be fired. And when that happened, Caden would be the only person in Hyron to offer her a job worthy of her caliber. Not out of pity, out of calculation. Because Layla Winter was worth 6,800 gelds and the entire Silver Thorn, along with Rain Calder. The Golden Window obediently calculated. The Silver Thorn Guild. Total valuation of all assets. 84,000 gelds. Caden looked at that number and, for the first time in 3 months, allowed himself a genuine smile. 84,000. It wasn't a question of strength, it was a question of time. And money. And time and money were what he knew how to manage best. Caden received proof of Sun Park's forged debts from Layla, but decided to postpone the lawsuit. Hannah thanked him for the first time. Thank him. He ran into Emily Rain, the captain's daughter, at the guild headquarters. The balance reached 10,000 geld, and Caden spent 8,000 to purchase the Tactician Strategist Level 1 class. The system estimated the total value of the Silver Thorn at 84,000 geld. Current balance, 2,000 geld. 4th month. The balance recovered to 6,400 geld. Mir's potions provided a steady income. Sun Park's recipes were released to the market through Finch under a brand. Tenebra continued to grow. 12 guilds per bunch. Caden sold little by little. He wasn't greedy. He wasn't in a hurry. Patience was his main weapon after learning the future. On the 120th day, Layla Winter was fired from Royal Intelligence. Everything happened exactly as he remembered. She refused to falsify the casualty report from the raid on the fourth-rank dungeon. Her commander, Colonel Dearest, filed a report. Disobeying orders, dismissal with a black mark. Layla left the intelligence building in civilian clothes, with a single sword at her belt and her personnel file in her hands. Caden was waiting for her on a bench across the street. She saw him. She stopped. Her face was like a stone wall. Not a single emotion. But the level 2 micro-expression reading skill he'd bought a week ago showed otherwise. Tension in her jaw. Dilated pupils. Her breath was half a second longer than usual. Rage. Controlled. Deep. The rage of a man who had done the right thing and been punished for it. Caden stood up. He walked over. "Lieutenant Winter." She looked at him. "Former lieutenant." Caden nodded. "I have a proposal." "Not here." They went to the tea house, the same one, the same place. Caden ordered tea. Layla sat up straight, hands on the table, a habit. Even after being dismissed, she carried herself like an officer. Caden spoke. "Without preamble, I'm setting up an organization, a trading company on the outside, an intelligence network on the inside. I need someone to be in charge of security, of counterintelligence, to make sure no one gets close to my people unnoticed." Layla listened. Her face was impassive. Pay. 500 gelds a month to start. A share of the profits once the company reaches a stable income. And one more thing. Caden leaned forward slightly. "I'll never ask you to falsify a report. If I don't like the truth, that's my problem, not yours." Silence. Layla looked at him. For a long time, her eyes narrowed slightly. Not out of suspicion, out of something else. Caden read it. Relief. Carefully hidden behind a mask. But relief. "Why do you need a former officer with a black mark?" "Because a black mark means you don't sell your conscience. In my organization, that's not a flaw. It's a job requirement." Layla finished her tea. She set the cup down, neatly, in the center of the saucer. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow." She nodded, stood up, stopped at the threshold, didn't turn around. "I know you're hiding something. I'm not asking what, but if you fall, I want to know in advance, so I can fall beside you." Caden looked at the closed door, then at the golden window. Layla Winter had joined the team. Role, head of security. Asset value, 6,800 gelds. He exhaled. The fourth key person. Mira, Hannah, Sadie, now Layla. The 5th month. Caden began preparations to set up a trading company. Layla took charge of scouting out premises. She found an abandoned warehouse in the lower city. 2 stories, stone, with a basement. A former trading house that went bankrupt 2 years ago. Rent, 200 guilds a month. Caden paid 3 months in advance, 600 guilds. His balance dropped to 5,100. But now he had a base. The warehouse became headquarters, a trading floor on the 1st floor, offices on the 2nd. The basement served as a storage area. Caden moved the tenebrae here, the recipes, the chronicle of the Order of the Moon, the folder with evidence on Venrite. Layla organized security. 2 mercenaries she knew from her service. Reliable, silent. 200 guilds a month for the 2 of them. Caden invited Hannah. Offered her a position, not a salary, a share. 20% of the sales of potions produced according to her father's recipes. Hannah stood in the middle of the empty trading hall and looked around. Then at Caden. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely." She pressed her lips together. Micro-expressions. A struggle. Pride versus necessity. Fear versus hope. Then she exhaled. "If you cheat me, I'll personally poison you so that no healer can save you." Caden nodded. Fair enough. Hannah got to work, fiercely, tirelessly. In the first week, she set up production for 5 types of potions. She organized the procurement of ingredients. She drew up a delivery schedule. Caden watched her and saw what the system saw. Hidden potential, master of poisons and elixirs. No longer a zero level. Her comprehension grew with each passing day. He invited Sadie later. She came into the workshop, sat down on a crate, looked at her. Sadie, I want you to forge only what you want to forge. No shovels, no cheap knives, only weapons, only the best. She looked at him with wide eyes. I can't. I have to pay for the workshop, for coal, for... Caden raised his hand. I'll pay for everything. The workshop, coal, metal, food, everything, for a year in advance. You're working for yourself. I'm just buying the result, at a fair price. Sadie blinked. What do you mean, a fair price? Caden looked at the sword in the corner. That one. The 12,000 gold one. For example, I'll pay 12,000 gold for that sword, when I can afford it. Silence. Sadie opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. 12,000. Caden stood up. You don't know how much you're worth. That's okay. Most people don't know. My job is to show you. He walked out. He heard a sound behind him. Quiet, almost silent. Sadie Park was crying. For the first time in a long time, not from pain, but because someone had looked at her work and seen what she herself hadn't seen. By the end of the 5th month, the team was assembled. Mira, healer and alchemist. Hana, potion making. El-Layla, security and intelligence. Sadie, weapons and equipment. 4 women, 4 stories, 4 debts that Caden paid not with gold, but by seeing in them, for the first time in their lives, not a function, but a human being. All that remained was a name. Caden stood in front of the warehouse door and looked at the empty sign. Then he took a brush and wrote, Silver Account, Trading Company. Layla stood beside him. She looked at the sign, Silver Account. Why silver? Caden looked at the moon rising above the rooftops of Hiron. Silver, as always. Because in this world, everything has a price. And I'm going to present the bill to those who thought they wouldn't have to pay. 6th month, balance, 14,000 gelds. The silver account was working. Hannah's potions were being sold through 3 distribution channels. Finch sold them in the lower city, direct deliveries to 2 pharmacies in the middle district, and 1 contract with a small adventurers guild that purchased enhancement potions before raids. Income was stable, growing. Mira brewed painkillers and began experimenting with other recipes from Sun Park's journal. Her hidden class, Blood Alchemist, unlocked in the 3rd week of the 6th month. Caden saw it in the golden window. Blood Alchemist, Level 1, activated. Mira Hale's value jumped from 3,400 to 5,200 gelds in a single day. She didn't understand what had happened herself. She just noticed that the potions were turning out faster, cleaner, stronger, as if her hands knew what to do before her head did. Caden knew, but he didn't say anything. Meanwhile, Layla was quietly doing her work. Every week, a report appeared on Caden's desk. The movements of key figures, financial flows, rumors, gossip. She knew how to turn noise into information like no one else. On the 170th day, she placed a new folder in front of him. Almer and Sons. I found the ultimate beneficiary. Caden opened the folder. He read it. And for the first time in months, his hands trembled slightly. The Van Wright Trading House. The very people who had forged Sun Park's debts were financing the Silver Thorn, a connection he hadn't seen in his past life. Van Wright paid Rain. Rain provided Van Wright a monopoly on buying up loot from the dungeons, a vicious circle. The guild hunted. Van Wright sold. The profits were split. And small-time players like Sun Park were eliminated so they wouldn't get in the way. Caden closed the folder. He looked at Layla. She was standing against the wall, hands behind her back, waiting. This changes everything. Layla nodded. If you file a lawsuit against Park now, Van Wright will realize that someone is digging. They'll come after you through Silver Thorn. Rain will be ordered to find the source of the leak, Caden thought. Quickly, like a tactician strategist. Connections, consequences, options. No, it's too early to file a lawsuit. But there's another way. He took out a sheet of paper, wrote 3 lines, handed it to Leela. She read it, raised an eyebrow. You want to buy up the Silver Thorn's debts. Not all of them, just the ones that go through Van Wright. If Van Wright finances the Guild through loans, then the Guild has promissory notes. If I buy those promissory notes, I'll own 40% of the Silver Thorn. Leela was silent. She was calculating in her head. How much would it cost? Caden already knew. The Golden Window had calculated it for him. Silver Thorn's debt obligations to Van Wright. Total amount, 312,000 gelds. Market value of the debt upon resale, 84,000 gelds. Because Van Wright viewed these debts as a tool of control, not an investment. He didn't need the money. He needed power. And for Caden, the debt was a weapon. I need 84,000 gelds. I have 14,000. I need 70,000 in 8 months. Leela looked at him as if he were crazy. That's impossible for a trading company of your size. Caden smiled. For an ordinary company? Yes. The silver account was no ordinary company. For the next 2 months, Caden worked harder than ever in both lives. Tenebra, the price kept rising. 15 gelds. 20. 25. Rumors of a fever in the provinces were spreading. Demand was growing. Caden Den sold in batches. He controlled the supply. He didn't dump everything at once so as not to crash the price. Potions. Hana expanded production. 10 varieties. 20. Sun Park worked alongside his daughter and, for the first time in years, looked like a man who had a reason to wake up in the morning. Revenue from potions tripled. Sidie's weapons. Caden began selling her blades, not through Finch, directly, to 2 guilds and 1 aristocratic house. Price per sword. From 500 to 2,000 gelds. Sidie couldn't believe it. Every time Caden brought her money, she looked at it as if it were a miracle. But she gradually got used to it, and with every sword, she forged better. The system was working. Graves's recipes. 17 formulas provided a steady income through a network of small resellers across all of Hyron. No one knew who was producing them. No one knew who was selling them. Finch took his cut and kept quiet. Information. Layla had built a network of 7 informants at key points in the city. The Port District, the Artifact Market, the Chamber of Commerce, the Royal Library, and 1 person inside the Silver Thorn. A clerk named Devon who, for 50 guilds a month, copied the guild's expense reports and passed them on to Layla. By the end of the 8th month, Caden's balance had reached 38,000 guilds. In the 9th month, what he knew and had been waiting for happened. Mira Hale's mother took a turn for the worse. Second-era painkillers kept the pain at bay, but the disease was progressing. Chronic bone tissue destruction. No cure. 6 months at most. A cure existed. 1. At the Royal Apothecary, price, 240,000 grams. Caden had 38,000. Mira came to him that evening, not to headquarters, to his new room above the warehouse. She knocked. She entered. She sat down on a chair. She was silent for a long time. Then she spoke. I need to leave, to be with Mom, her last days. She didn't finish. Caden looked at her. Micro-expression reading. Level 2 showed everything. Grief, exhaustion, acceptance. She had already said goodbye, inside herself. She had already let go. Like someone who's used to no one coming to their aid. Caden stood up. He walked over to the safe. He entered the code. He opened it. He took out everything inside. 38,000 gelds. He placed it on the table in front of Mira. She looked at the money, then at him. This won't be enough. I know. Caden sat back down. But in 3 months I'll have 240,000, and you'll go to the Royal Apothecary and buy the medicine. Mira looked at him. Her lips trembled. It's all your money. I'll build the guild again. You only have one mother. Silence. A long one. Mira covered her face with her hands. She didn't cry. She wasn't crying. But her shoulders shook once. Then she straightened up, took her hands away, looked at him with eyes in which something had broken and something else had taken its place. Why are you doing this? Because it's a sound investment. Mira shook her head. No, that's not why. Caden paused. Because in another life, I didn't have time. She didn't understand, but she accepted it. She took the money. She left. She turned around at the threshold. I won't leave. I'll stay and earn what's missing. Together. The door closed. Caden sat in the empty room with a zero balance and thought. 38,000 given away. To reach 84,000 to pay off the debts, he still needed 84,000 from scratch. Plus 240,000 for medicine, a total of 324,000 gelds in 3 months. The golden window flashed. System recommendation. Activate debt purchase. Take skills on credit. Increase combat power. Earn money through high-rank dungeons. Warning. Interest rate. 8% per day. Non-refundable within 7 days. Penalty. Years of life. Caden closed the window. No loans from the system. He would find another way. He always had. The 10th month. Caden was going all in. In the 2 weeks since the reset, he had taken the silver account to a new level. Sadie had forged a batch of 8 blades. The system valued each one at between 2,000 and 6,000 gelds. Caden sold them through the artifact auction in the upper quarter, anonymously, through a frontman Layla had found. The 8 swords sold for 26,000 gelds. Net profit after all expenses and commissions, 19,000. Hana launched a new product on the market, the Second Era Regeneration Elixir, a formula from Sun Park's journal, 5 times more effective than any modern equivalent. Price per dose, 500 guilds. Demand exceeded supply in the very first week. 3 major guilds lined up. Hana produced 6 doses a week, 4,800 guilds in revenue. Caden's share was 20%. 960 a week. Tenebra. The price skyrocketed to 40 gelds per bundle. The frenzy spread to neighboring provinces. Caden sold half of his remaining stock, 30 bundles at 40 each, 1,200 gelds. Balance at the end of the 10th month, 52,000 guilds, 272,000 left to go. 3 months. Impossible at the current pace. A breakthrough was needed. Caden found it in the dungeon. Not just any dungeon, a specific one. A 3rd rank dungeon. The Ash Wyvern's Nest. The very one. The place of his death in his past life. The place where Rain Calder sent him first, so the Wyvern would use its main burn on him. The place that haunted his dreams every night for the first month after the regression. Golden Window. The Ash Wyvern's Nest Dungeon. Rank 3. Boss. Ash Wyvern. Reward. 18,000 gelds. Estimated loot. 12,000 to 15,000 gelds. Recommended party strength. 25,000 gelds. Caden's current strength. 4,200 gelds. Tactician Strategist, Level 2. Fencing, Level 3. Stealth, Level 2. Endurance, Level 2. Reading Micro-Expressions, Level 2. Glove of the Silent Thief. Not enough. Not even close to enough. But Caden wasn't going alone. He assembled a team. Not from Silverthorn, his own. Layla. 6,800 gelds of combat power. Tracker Level 6. Darren. Yes, that very same Darren from the rookie group, the one who was supposed to disappear in 8 months. Caden found him 2 months before his disappearance, figured out the reason. Darren owed money to people he'd be better off not owing, the Black Trio Mercenaries, an underground organization in the lower city. Caden paid off his debt, 1,500 gelds. Darren came to him at headquarters, stood by the door, said nothing. Then he spoke. "What do you want?" Caden looked at him. Golden window. Darren Kale. Rating, 2,400 gelds. Class, Shadowblade Level 4. Hidden Potential. Master of Shadows Level 0. 40% unlocked. The guy has grown. 4 months in the dungeons haven't been in vain. I need someone who knows how to move in the dark. Darren looked at him for a long time. Then he nodded. Third World. Not as a fighter, as a healer. Blood Alchemist, Level 2. She could brew buff potions right in the heat of battle, on the fly, from the ingredients she carried with her. Fourth, Hana. Caden didn't want to take her, but she came on her own. She stood in the doorway of headquarters, arms crossed. "I'm coming." Hana. No. She stepped inside. "My father created a poison that paralyzes reptiles for 12 seconds. I reproduced the formula. I have 6 doses." Silence. 12 seconds of paralysis for the wyvern. 12 seconds during which you can strike without dodging. Caden looked at her. Micro-expressions, determination, fear, and something else, something new. She wanted to be there, not out of duty, not out of gratitude, because she wanted to. All right, the team. Caden 4,200. Layla 6,800. Darren 2,400. Mira 5,200. Hana 1,200. Total 19,800 gelds. Against the recommended 25,000. A shortfall of 5,200. Caden had studied the dungeon for 3 days. Maps, notes, reports from previous raids from the archive that Layla had copied from the intelligence library. He knew every corridor, every trap, every turn. He remembered walking these corridors 5 years ago, first, as bait. No longer bait. They entered the dungeon at dawn. Caden led the way. Not in the front, from the center. Tactician Strategist allowed him to see the positions of the entire group at once. Layla in front, Recon. Darren on the flank, Shadow. Mira in the center next to Caden. Hana in the rear, poisons at the ready. The first 2 levels went smoothly. Ash lizards. Fire snakes. Nothing the group couldn't take down in a minute. Layla moved like a machine. Precise, efficient. Not a single wasted movement. Darren emerged from the shadows, struck, disappeared. Mira brewed on the fly, reflex boost, fire resistance potion. She handed them out to the team like breakfast. Hana was silent, counting the doses of poison. 6. On the 3rd level, Caden stopped the group. The boss room was behind the next door. He stood and stared at the stone doorway. The last time he was here, he went in first, and never came out. Layla stood beside him, ready. Caden nodded. The plan. Layla goes in first, provokes an attack, dodges. Her combat instinct, level 4, will let her dodge the first burn. When the wyvern opens its mouth for the second breath, Hana throws poison, right down its throat. 12 seconds of paralysis. During those 12 seconds, Darren and Caden strike at the weak spots. The neck, the underside of the wings, the base of the tail. Mira keeps everyone on fire resistance potions. They went in. The wyvern was waiting, huge, gray, with wings covered in a crust of ash, eyes like burning coals. It raised its head and growled. Heat hit them in a wave. The air trembled. Caden looked at her and felt it. Fear. Real fear. A phantom pain in his chest, where there had been a hole 5 years ago. He gripped his sword, a cheap one, 30 gelds. But in the hands of a tactician strategist with fencing level 3, even a cheap sword struck true. Layla lunged forward. The wyvern exhaled, a stream of ashen fire. Layla moved to the left. The fire passed by. It scorched the wall. The stone cracked from the heat. The wyvern opened its mouth for a second breath. Kana. Now. Kana threw. The vial flew in an arc, right into the open throat, shattered against the teeth. The liquid splashed inside. The wyvern twitched. It wheezed and froze. Its muscles turned to stone. Its wings froze mid-flap. Its eyes burned, but its body didn't move. 12 seconds, Caden counted.